Hi, this is going to be my artist presentation on a very interesting female surrealist artist and an original artwork of hers that I'd like to describe today. Today I am pointing out a painting called Portrait of Max Ernst. This is an oil on canvas production created by the artist Leonora Carrington. She painted this in 1939, 2 years into her romantic relationship with Max Ernst, the other surrealist artist. A little bit about Leonora Carrington. She was a Mexican-British artist who was born in 1917 in Lancaster, England, and she was able to live a very long life and had passed away in Mexico City in 2011. She was raised in an aristocratic lifestyle. She was exposed to many different types of culture and art and even animals, where she became quite obsessed with horses even. She would include horses in her artwork even as her alter ego. She would end up dating Max Ernst in a romantic partnership as well as a artistic partnership, and live with him for 3 years of her life before World War II. She became a surrealist painter, style artist, but would also be known for her writing as well. I'd like to do a descriptive critique for the next slide. I wanted to touch base on some of the details that I noticed in this painting, some of the perspectives and colors that I notice are interesting. So first off, I recognize this really dark blue top foreground in the sky. It's so deep, almost like it's about to be nighttime. I see it turn into this gradient green and white as it fades into the perspective line, horizon line back there, where you can see it kind of almost fade behind these jutting sharp rocks. They're definitely icebergs, but they just seem so sharp and spear-like and shadowed and almost nearly untouchable. Like the sharp angle that they're jutting up from the water, it just seems like they're just uninhabitable. Another interesting thing I noticed is that ocean is so green, so opaque, so dark. It's almost scary. I do notice the entire background is this cool toned palette, full of whites, grays, blues, and greens, separating Max Ernst from the picture, but also making him pop out as a warm figure. I do notice that that horse behind Max Ernst is almost the whitest thing besides his hair in this picture, still shrouded in shadow and icicles, even these sharp jutting out objects coming down from gravity off of the horse. Very, very sharp still. An interesting perspective of the horse is the fact that its hindquarters is blending in well with that iceberg, almost as if the horse is completely glued to the iceberg, or maybe even a whole part, an actual piece of the iceberg. Same color, same texture, same form. As you look around Max Ernst's lower limb and his tail, you can see that the rest of the surface that they are standing on is also that icy texture, that smooth gray white texture. And you can see there in the foreground that there are little icicles kind of resembling the ones on the horse that would kind of tie in those textures and remind us that they are indeed standing on ice. Another really interesting point to look at is the fact that there is no crunching underneath Max Ernst, so it almost seems as if he's not standing on snow. He's definitely standing on straight ice. To contrast those cool tones, you see him standing there in this massive red fuzzy down red coat, very warm, and donning a fishtail. Still interesting. He's very still yet moving, with his right foot stepping out in front of him, covered in a yellow fabric striped with blue-green stripes. Very quirky. I would not assume somebody just wearing socks in this type of environment, but it's very interesting. You can see Max Ernst donning his white hair that he had during this time period, as well as these old elder features, his sagging jowls and his face. But you also notice in his eyes, he's got this wise look in his eyes, very imaginative look in his eyes, very signature of Max Ernst, and also can resemble some of the obsession that Leonora would have had for him. I do notice inside of the lantern he has holding in his right hand, there is another horse. It is rearing its hindquarters. Through that, you can barely see it through that opaque green glass, kind of respective of the green ocean behind him. And it's a very simple lantern, egg-shaped, with a very simple brassy handle and base. Very interesting. So for the next slide, I'd like to do my contextual critique to kind of quickly give us a rundown on what was going on in Leonora's life to see what may have brought her to paint this painting. So around the time of this painting, Max Ernst and Leonora had been in a romantic relationship for about 2 years and had lived together in southern London southern France for about 2 years. She had been exposed to many different surrealist artists, famous ones, specifically Salvador Dali, even Rene Magritte, and experiencing many different muses and styles and expressions and opinions, and just tons and tons of culture from the surrealist movement and the world that Max Ernst had been a part of previously, and this would kind of turn him into a muse of sorts for Leonora, teaching her and giving her influence and access to the most important and prestigious surrealist artists. Also, they were living in southern France for that 3 years. They would separate in 1940, right after this painting. Max Ernst would be arrested by the French because of his German citizenship. Another very interesting contextual piece of evidence for the horses that Leonora often puts in her paintings. She grew to love horses in her youth and would eventually begin to use them as her alter ego or her representative of herself in her paintings. Very, very interesting. So you notice 2 of those in this painting. However, on the cusp of war, and in a place very unfamiliar to her, living with Max Ernst, she may have felt very out of place and kind of in a strange land, almost like an alien landscape. So that may have possibly been depicted here as well. Very interesting. For this next slide, I'd like to give you a little bit of what I would think Leonora was feeling at the time of painting this, or what she was trying to express to her reviewers, and as well as what my personal opinion was about this painting. So I had a hard time memorizing my opinions, so I wrote them down, so I'm going to read them to you now. I notice in this painting a very warm, fuzzy red fishtail coat man. He may symbolize Max Ernst's comforting presence and odd perspectives in Leonora's life. His yellow sock may also represent a bit of Max's quirky and imaginative personality. Leonora's alter is being expressed in 2 ways here in this painting, leading me to see her as a pure white horse, frozen to the ground, literally behind Max Ernst, maybe as a student or a lover, or as his perhaps soulless creature that lives with him. The horse in the background has a stare, longing for more of an experience and a sense of expression, a less prominent reflection of his vision as a surrealist artist, maybe even behind him. she could be expressing interpersonal confliction between the two of them as well, because this is 2 years into their relationship, and maybe she was wondering what was her purpose, if she had anything past this, if she could grow any further in this relationship, maybe. Um, well, while her more exuberant ego and rebellious side is represented as a rearing horse inside that lantern. Maybe it's possibly a representation of her feeling contained within his in his lantern or in his path. You could see that maybe she could be expressing herself through that lantern, as maybe she may be feeling a comfortable female role as a proud provider of warmth, light, inspiration to Max Ernst, maybe, and maybe feeling like she's losing out herself. My personal depiction, or my personal idea, what I notice in this picture is certainly deep. It hit me. I looked at this painting for quite a while, and all I feel is when I stare deep into this poem of a painting, I feel like I'm on a journey with a very wise teacher, one who I've gotten myself lost with on a journey, and this journey may lead to bliss, but it may also lead down a manic road to insanity, which is very interesting because she did end up losing herself and having a mental breakdown after Max Ernst was arrested, and their relationship abruptly ended in 1940, and she would be institutionalized, and she would go through very horrific therapies to try to solve her mental instability, but no matter, she still came out and would live a very fairly functional life, and moved to Mexico City to settle and live out her old age, where she would die being known as one of Mexico's most famous female surrealist artists. Thank you. And here is a list of resources that I utilized to create this presentation. I apologize that my video has covered up one of the resources, but I can provide that at request. I appreciate your attention today. Thank you so much. Bye.